Support the show and get your Everyone Loves Guitar t-shirts, hoodies, and mugs at guitarmerch.com, where you'll also find other cool music and guitar t-shirts. That's guitarmerch.com. Hey, everybody. This is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, and we have a great guest with us today with Vaughn Kopfman, and Vaughn has a tremendous personal story. He's a lovely guy, and his commitment to music and to people, making the world a better place for people, is pretty unheralded. So let's get into it. Let me just tell you how we met initially. I'm on an Eastman guitar forum. A Facebook group, I should say accurately. And I kept seeing this, what I thought was a young kid, Vaughn Kopfman, liking and supporting all these posts. I'm like, this is interesting. I always see this guy liking posts. And so me being kind of curious, I said, let me check this guy out. So I looked and I started doing some, just a couple of clicks here and there. And it turns out that the photo is not Vaughn. Vaughn is here, obviously, with us, and that's the photo of his son that he lost in a tragic accident. And Vaughn is an Eastman artist, and he's a good guy. He's an Eastman artist, so he clicks on all the posts to support people there, because that's what, good artists do. They support their companies. And I started looking at his background, and he has come out with 34 albums over the last 15 or 20 years. And he's so passionate about music, and he's so passionate about life, and he's put a phenomenal book together called Letters for Healing, and we're going to talk about that, obviously. But let me get into his background. But he's a lovely guy, and he's one of these people that I meet through this show that I say, man, what a lucky guy I am to have contact with classy human beings like this. So Vaughn, prolific songwriter, guitarist, and author. He's originally from Emporia, Kansas. He recorded his first solo record in 1994 when he was 29 years old. Since that time, he's written over 3,000 songs, recorded 34 records, including 6 albums with his band project called Big Daddy Loud. They're a popular regional rock band in Kansas. Vaughn co-owned a large mechanical and plumbing company for 20 years in Topeka, Kansas, which he recently sold. Musically, he's managed by Mike Gormley, and you might know Mike's name because he was involved with the Bangles, the Police, Peter Frampton, Jeff Skunk Baxter, and Danny Elfman. Vaughn is an artist for Eastman guitars, Magnetone amps, and ear trumpet mics. He has 3 kids. As I mentioned, he lost his son Jacob in a tragic accident in 2011, which inspired Vaughn to write this book, Letters for Healing. The revised version 2 of this book just came out, so I would love you to go order it. If you have lost a family member at all, or you have somebody, it is a very moving book. I read it, and it's extremely touching. Vaughn also created a not-for-profit organization called forthesurvivors.org. I mean, this is the kind of human being he is. He has a crisis, and his initial reaction is, how can I help other people get through this same crisis with avoiding some of the, rigmarole that I had to go through. ForTheSurvivors.org provides resources to families who've lost a child. I would encourage you to check that out if you've lost a child or a loved one. Vaughn recently, and it's Vaughn, V-O-N, recently located to Houston, Texas. He's currently in pre-production on his 35th and 36th albums at Edgewater Studios in Houston. Occupied. I sound like I'm from the Bronx now. Occupied and Invaded is one of the records. That's going to be a pop album. And Ambiguous Man is a rock guitar instrumental. With great pleasure, Vaughn, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've really enjoyed talking to you and getting to know you.
Thank you so much for having me. I was shocked when you reached out, to be honest. So thank you so much.
You're a great human being. You have a good story, and your commitment to music is people need to know about it.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the beginning. You grew up in Emporia, Kansas, and again, I kidded with you last time we talked, but being from the Bronx, I know nothing about that part of town, even though I live in Florida now. But I looked it up on the map. It's between sort of Topeka and Wichita, or Kansas City and Wichita, but it's a small place. In 2020, the population of Topeka of Emporia was only 25,000. So for people like myself who've never been to that part of the country, if you could talk about what is that like there? What was your childhood like growing up there, and any information along those lines?
Well, we know we spent a lot of time fighting off the Indians. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, Emporia was an awesome place to grow up. We have a university there, Emporia State University, which is a really well-respected teaching university. A lot of small and medium-sized manufacturing there, but also very rural, a lot of farming, a lot of ranching. We lived about 3 miles outside of town on 10 acres. So, growing up, I mean, I had, a BB gun, railroad tracks, a pond, a creek, and a river, and a dog. And so I had a lot of cool stuff to do.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So Emporia was a great place to grow up, actually.
Was it one of those towns where, in a smaller town, it seems like everybody knows everybody? Is that the kind of place it is?
Oh yeah. Very much that way. Yeah. And kind of, Midwestern sensibilities. I mean, people like to work, and you kind of had some morals and some values and some, it just people got along. It was a good place.
That's nice, man.
Still is. Yeah. Still is.
That's really nice. What kind of work did your parents do, and did they get you into music?
Yeah, my mom was a dental assistant, worked for 2 different dentists in her whole career. And she's very artistic. My mom makes, she can draw or paint really well, but she makes beautiful quilts and knits and crochet. She would make some of our clothes when we were kids, and they looked better than the clothes that, some of the other kids were wearing. So she's very artistic. My dad worked for a place called Diddy Graphic Systems. They were at one time the world's largest manufacturer of web-fed printing presses. So, and he was always singing. I think my dad had like dreams of being a folk singer, and he was always singing. He would have my sister and I get up on the coffee table and do little concerts, sing along with Lawrence Welk Show or Hee Haw or whatever was on TV, So, yeah, they were very, very encouraging to me, to get it to do something
that's cool,
artistic, and certainly with music.
So they were supportive of your musical endeavors.
Oh yeah, very much so.
That's cool. So, as I mentioned, you've written over 3,000 songs, which is really pretty amazing. And between your solo albums and your work with Big Daddy Loud, you've recorded 34 records. Yet, we talked and you said your original goal was never to make music on your own, but to write songs for others. And I know this is obviously some sensitivity to this, so whatever extent you want to talk about why you started writing music back in the 4th grade and how this process, music and guitar, changed your life. Be as open and only as comfortable as you feel like.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Emporia. At a young age, we moved to Louisville, Kentucky with my dad's work, and we moved back in 4th grade. So halfway through 4th grade. So the first song that I remember writing was actually in Kentucky, and we were studying about General Custer, and we were in the library, and I made up some little thing. And my teacher said, where did you hear that song? And I said, I don't know. I made it up. And when we got back to the classroom, she asked me to get up in front of the class and sing it. And everybody seemed to like it. And I thought, well, this is a pretty good gig. This is fun. But I didn't write anything else until we moved back to Kansas toward the end of 1974, so kind of halfway through my 4th grade year. And they were teaching... the music teacher, Mrs. Pickering, was also offering guitar lessons. So I and one of my classmates signed up. My dad had an old folk guitar that he had bought. Decca was the brand, like the record label.
Yeah.
Always set up in the top of their closet. My mom would occasionally, if I begged, would get it down and let me noodle around with it. But when I started taking guitar lessons, they gave me that guitar, which now we lovingly refer to as the Jesus guitar, which is an interesting story in itself. But I got that guitar, started taking guitar lessons, and I didn't give much thought to writing really until my birthday is early in June. Right before my 10th birthday and right after, I was molested by a neighbor up the road. He was about 11 years older than myself. And I didn't tell anybody. In fact, I didn't deal with that till I was 42 years old. The reason I didn't tell anybody at the time was because he threatened to do that to my sister. He threatened to kill my dog. And so, I just didn't tell anybody. And what that does to a person, it alters everything. All kinds of crazy thoughts go through your mind, but you're embarrassed, you're ashamed. Homosexuality wasn't discussed, to the extent that it is now. But I literally thought as a 10-year-old, well, I must be gay now. That's how people get gay. Like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I just thought, okay, that's what I have to be now, which, I'm not. But at the time, you have all these things going through your head. And that's where probably the greatest gift that my parents gave me, short of life, that's where music comes into play, because the guitar then became my best friend, my counselor, my companion. And honestly, I have not had a point in my life since I was 10 years old that I haven't had a guitar, that I haven't played a guitar every day. I never get tired of it. It's everything, and so the songwriting then, that's when songwriting really came into play. I had gotten some money for my birthday. Now, mind you, my birthday is June the 2nd. I was molested the first time about a week before that. Oh. And but I'd gotten some birthday money, and we had a little department store in Emporia called David's Department Store, and my mom took me there to spend my birthday money. And what I wanted was 2 records. I wanted John Denver's Greatest Hits, the green cover with the silly hat on, and I wanted Elton John, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Deer Cowboy. So I had enough money to buy the John Denver record, but I only had about half the money I needed for the Elton John record. And, back then, you got stuff at Christmas time and you got stuff at your birthday. You got the Sears catalog that you could circle what you wanted, or the Penny's catalog. You didn't get stuff every time you went somewhere like people do now. But, yeah. And, we were a very middle class. We didn't have a ton of extra stuff, but my mom pitched in and gave me the extra money so I could get the Elton John record. And that Elton John record really changed my life. I actually felt like those songs were written for me, were written about what happened to me. And my parents had a record player, and they would go to bed, and I would literally sneak in there and lay on the floor and listen to that record and cry and literally feel like those songs were written for me. And back then, you got a record. In fact is I still
there you
have.
go. Yeah, I have that same record, man.
And if you look at that, probably the best cover that was ever put on a record by anybody ever. And you open it up, I still have it. It came with a comic book and a fan book and pictures and the lyrics. And I would lay there and I would listen to those songs, having just been molested and got molested again right, probably within the week of getting this record. I would lay there and listen to those songs. And, you listen to Someone Saved My Life and you think, they wrote that song for me. And, but it also really altered, and the only other stuff that I was never a big TV watcher, but I always liked to listen to the TV theme songs. And then I would come back in the room at the end when the credits would roll, and I would look to see who wrote, the TV theme song. And I always wanted to either be the guy that wrote TV theme songs, or I wanted to be Bernie Taupin, really. I wanted to be that. One of the things that I figured out really quick, well, let me back up a little bit. TV theme songs had really specific lyrics that usually tied right into the TV show quite often. You know, "Welcome Back, Cotter," or whatever
Yeah,
it was.
back in the day, it did.
Whereas,
yeah,
but if you listen to stuff like what Bernie Taupin was writing lyrically, he was saying a lot without saying a lot. You could talk about what happened to you without blurting out that I was molested.
Yeah.
You know, that I was raped. And so I started writing and keeping notebooks, poems and lyrics. You know, I knew three chords on a guitar, you know, on the Jesus guitar, but I start writing lyrics, so I'm trying to say in lyrics starting in, you know, before I got into 5th grade about what happened to me without anybody knowing what happened to me. And I still have a couple of those notebooks, you know, and you see a guy trying to scream out, you know, what happened without anybody knowing what really happened. And so, you know, music was my escape and was my savior. I remember, you know, we maybe you grew up this way too, but you'd get the Sears or the Penny's catalog, and Mom and Dad would let my sister and I circle 2 or 3 things. And that didn't mean you were going to get those 2 or 3 things, but you circled what you wanted. And, you know, that Captain Fantastic record came out, and then John Denver, they came out in the summer of '75 there. I mean, it had just come out when I got them. But at Christmas in the Penny's catalog, and I got this, I thought you might enjoy this too.
Oh my God, you're the actual, I think the catalog?
So, no, this is the Bernie Taupin, the one who wrote the words for Elton John. And the cover is sort of like the Captain Fantastic cover.
That is so cool.
This was the only thing I wanted for Christmas that year, and I got it.
That's awesome.
And I've kept this book, and that was like my Bible for writing lyrics. You know, I'm sure I probably nicked and copied, you know, Bernie Taupin lyrics, but this was like my education. And there's pictures in there too, you know, there's pictures that go along with all the lyrics. And so I would literally listen to the record and I would look at these lyrics. But, you know, it probably sounds silly to say, but I mean, you know, Elton John and Bernie Taupin kind of saved my life, or saved my sanity, or certainly provided a vehicle, even at that young age, to try to help me deal with what happened to me, and to try to be able to express myself artistically at 10 years old. And I've kept these 2 things. I mean, they're 2 of my most prized possessions to this day, because I just spent hours and hours and hours listening to and reading, and so yeah, that's how that all got started. And I started writing right after I got molested, and I've never stopped. You know, thank goodness I've never had a writer's block. I'm not as compelled as I used to be to write every thought that came down in my head. You know, it used to be literally, if I woke up at 3 a.m. with an idea, I would write it down.
Sure.
I'm not as compelled to do that, but I still write almost every day. And I've got literally hundreds and hundreds of songs that I've demoed into an iPhone, and when it gets full, I send them to my email. And I've been blessed, I guess, in that regard, that they just keep coming, you know. And I try to write songs that have some meaning, you know, that I try not to waste words or write things that are frivolous, you know. Try to write something that means something, hopefully to help somebody.
A few things. First of all, we've talked about this before, but I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. That is just about the most predatory thing that can happen. It's hard for me to even talk about it, to be honest with you. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Also, I'm glad you had something to hold on to, because, you know, when you're a kid, we don't have coping skills that can get us out of shit like that. They don't exist when you're freaking 10 years old. You know, so I'm so happy that you were able to hang on to something. If somebody's listening and they had a similar experience and they have been holding on to this, is there any like advice that you might be able to offer?
Tell somebody that you can trust. If you're, I don't know how many kids you have listening, but looking back, I wished I would have told my parents. I had great parents. I could talk to them about anything really, but I was so scared that he would do that to my sister or kill my dog and I'll be honest with you, I was scared my dad would go kill him.
Yeah.
My dad's not a violent man by any stretch.
How do you not react like that if you hear
10
that?
years old, I was scared about that.
Of course.
But I'm going to tell you, if there's somebody out there listening that had this happen to them, you have got to go get some help. At 42 years old, a couple of things happened that just realized I had dealt with this on my own and bottled this up and let it affect my life and eat me up long enough, and I went and started seeing a therapist and it just helped me immensely.
Yeah.
I wished I'd have done it at 22 instead of waiting till I was 42. You're not equipped as a kid to deal with that. And so you hold it in, and it literally affects every aspect of your life. It's just so vital to go get some help and talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
I just can't emphasize that enough.
I don't even know if you're equipped to deal with something like that as an adult. That's not a norm. I mean, you think how overwhelming raising a child is, for example. Yeah. And that's in theory, an organic, natural process. And it's overwhelming. I don't know that you're ever equipped to deal with that, even if you have your shit together, Right.
The difference is as a kid, somebody makes that threat of hurting your sister or killing your dog or whatever. You don't even know how to combat that.
You wake up every day. That's the first thing you think about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. And, I give you a lot of credit for, clearly you've done a lot of work on that to be able to speak about it. And thank you so much. It was really.
I did ask my sister many years later on a trip to visiting my parents. They had retired and moved. And I did ask her, if he ever did. And she said no.
Thank God.
He never did. And yeah, that was a big relief to me.
I can't imagine. That's the sort of like, the poison. Bad enough would happen to you, but then to be carrying that thing around, like,
right.
You're now responsible for the life of your sister or your dog. I mean, that's heavy shit for a kid. It's heavy shit for an adult.
Well, and that's what predators
yeah.
do. They put it all back on you.
Yeah.
And that's pretty common. And talking to the therapist, I started seeing a guy named Dr. John Farrell Higgins. Actually, I still go see him. And occasionally, and
dude, we're never fixed. Trust me.
yeah. He told me a few times. He said, you really probably are good. You don't really need to keep coming to see me. I said, it's like a tune-up or an oil change. It's maintenance. I do need to keep coming.
It's maintenance, man. Yeah, you need mental maintenance. Life's not easy. Life's not for the weak.
No, nobody's going to get out of here alive.
Yeah,
that's
man.
for sure.
Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that.
You bet.
Talk about your songs. A lot of your songs, I went through a good chunk of your catalog, which was not easy.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, you got a massive catalog. But a lot of your songs are like you're sort of sticking up for the common man in there, or talking about the injustices of the world and the lack of power that the average person has to do anything about these injustices. And I heard that throughout your topics like clean water in certain communities. The fact that, access to the American dream has sort of been ripped away from a majority of the people here. You had one track that was really pretty. You had a video. It was very touching about special needs kids and how that they're often looked at as lesser than by adults, let alone by other kids.
That's an interesting story right there.
Let me finish this, and I'd actually like to hear that. But in general, there's a theme of you identifying this imbalance of power of justice, corporate fat cats or their customers, or, you had really good stuff in there about how people are so media obsessed and celebrity driven, which is nutty as hell. So I have a few questions I want to ask you about it, but before that, talk about that video now, because it was very touching.
Yeah.
Man. It was really the tearjerker.
Well, the first thing, the whole, you're right on track on kind of the theme lyrically that I try to shoot for, but that goes right back to a 10-year-old boy that was molested, that has no power, has no say, is bottling that all in, and the injustice and the unfairness and all the things that go along with that. And so a lot of those songs are masking what happened to me, or projecting what happened to me in kind of a broader worldview.
Yeah.
And so I've always kind of felt that way, but it goes right back to that 10-year-old boy, you know.
Wow.
The song
that's heavy, man.
That you're referring to is called "The Real Me." My HR director at my company, her sister-in-law, that had a little girl that was born special needs. She's in a wheelchair. I don't know all of the things that she has, but she's not able to talk, and they've done a remarkable job with her. But she makes kind of some involuntary noises and things. Well, they had her at a doctor appointment in her wheelchair, and this was not too many years ago. So she's, 12, 13 years old. And they've got her at a doctor's appointment, and she's making some of the noises that she makes. And this gentleman in the waiting room, I'm paraphrasing here, but he essentially told her mother something to the effect, "Why don't you take that out into the hall?
Oh my God.
And when they call your name, I'll come out and get you." Like basically she's not a human. Just take that thing out into the hall.
Process that.
And my HR director was telling me about it. And
Jesus.
I went home at lunch and wrote that song over my lunch hour, and I asked Dan Maurer with Click Creative, who's done most of the video stuff. I said, "I'd like you to make a video for this." I don't like making videos, to be honest with you. I don't want to be in a video. But I said, "I want to make a video, and I want you to go to these folks' house if they'll give us permission. I want you to make her front and center in the video, but I want to put as many special needs people, and not just necessarily people with an intellectual handicap, but folks that maybe are missing an arm or missing a leg, or whatever it is. I want to get as many of them in there featured front and center as possibly can." And I thought he did a brilliant job.
He did
with the video.
Great.
He really did. And the only way it could have been better is if there had been none of me. None of me. But
you're fine. You're great.
But the song is very powerful, and I wanted those folks that have been made to feel marginalized and less than to feel power, to feel acceptance, to feel love. And I think the song did a good job with that. I think, when I wrote that, not everything I write I think is great. Most of it I think is not. But that was one I was really proud of. It came out exactly as I intended, and the video was very powerful and came out as I better than I had hoped. Dan is really, really good at what he does, so it turned out really well.
Dude, it was a lovely song. The lyrics are really powerful, and that, to me, that's like a song that would be, like a commercial for some entity that supports special needs people. I mean, it was really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you. I took a lot of pride in that.
You should. It was very touching. You did great work on it. What? A lot of these themes that you talk about, man, that was interesting. I can't believe I knew your story. I should have picked up on that, man, about the theme, where it all comes from. It's amazing how shit. It's amazing how shit that fucks us up. Excuse me. I know your family's going to watch this and they're going to say, "Who's that guy from the Bronx with the gutter mouth?" But I apologize. It's amazing how shit that messes us up, how much it hangs around, and the impact it has on our lives.
You have to try to turn these things around.
Yeah.
You have to try to make something positive out of something negative. I mean, that's the whole reason I wrote the book.
Yeah.
After losing my son. Otherwise it just eats you up.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the bitterness and the anger and all the things that I felt toward the person that molested me, for example. You can either put that into song lyrics and send that out into the world and project that onto the powerless and all that stuff, or you can just continue to let that stay in you and eat you up.
Yeah.
Because the only person, I guarantee you, it wasn't hurting him. Any anger or bitterness that I had wasn't hurting him. He didn't give me a thought.
Right. He wasn't going to bed at night thinking about, I wonder how what's going on in Vaughn's.
I'm not a thought in his brain.
Yeah.
So the only person that was eating up was me.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, I didn't get therapy till I was 42. The therapy was, what was that?
Yeah.
Was learning how to write a lyric or a poem and expressing what happened in that medium. That was my release and my therapy, for sure.
Where do you think all this stuff is going, as far as, like, you do write about valid topics in your lyrics? They're emotional expressions of yours, and they may have been born from a tragic event, but they're very valid topics. I mean, the obsession people have with celebrities, which I think is nuts. That is just blows my mind. I mean, I don't get it at all. I don't get a lot of things. Maybe people don't get me. That's cool. Just the imbalances. Where do you, if you have any thoughts on it, where do you think all this stuff is going? Do you think things are going to even out? I don't even know.
Everything seems to go in a big circle. The unfortunate thing is that the big circle that we're in is that circle that's swirling down the drain, is what it feels like to me. We've completely lost our center, really. As a kid, my dad had a big circle of friends that they would golf and fish and hunt and all those things. And those guys would be at the house and they would get into just passionate political arguments, discussions. And I mean, they are going at defending their point of view. But at the end of it, they're still friends.
Yeah, they're having a beer
still eating
and
supper.
Right.
And they're going to go fishing and golfing and hunting or whatever. Right. They don't hate each other. They're not trying to bash the other. They're not, that's not where we're at anymore.
I know.
There is no center, and there is no I'm going to respect your point of view, whether I agree with it or not. You're entitled to your point of view. There is none of that. If you don't agree with me 100%, I'm going to do everything I can to discredit you, make you the bad one. And I have my own theory about that. My theory is that when you look at politicians, for example, and they divulge their net worth when they run for office, and they're not worth $1 million, and they take a job where they're living in Washington, D.C., the very expensive place to live, and they're making a couple $100,000 a year, allegedly, and at the end of 4 years, their net worth is somehow, $2 or $3 million. Yeah. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that there's something wrong here.
Yeah, where do those numbers come from? Right, it's math.
Right.
Yeah.
My theory is that all of us really, the vast majority of us are good people.
Yeah, I agree.
And we're like ants. We're ants. We're just out doing our thing, working, minding our business. And then you've got these people that are like that kid with a stick that's just, stirring the anthill up and making chaos and disarray. And the whole idea, in my opinion, is to keep us distracted, to keep us fighting, to keep us occupied with things that don't actually matter.
Yeah.
So that we're not paying attention to the things that actually do matter.
Yeah.
If we got as involved with what's actually going on as we do with the Kardashians,
dude,
which I'm proud to say I've never watched an episode.
Both of us.
But if we got as involved with the things that actually affect our daily lives, this stuff would stop.
Yeah.
But we're distracted. We're uneducated. I mean, the education system has just slowly kind of gotten weaker, I think. Not that the teachers are weaker. What the standard has been
I
lowered,
agree with you.
Without getting totally in the deep end. When you start giving a trophy to every team, even the 18th place team gets a trophy, and everybody gets a medal, and everybody gets a gold star. You fail every question on a test, but you get a gold star. That's not reality.
What's your incentive to work harder?
Right. Well, that's just not reality.
Yeah.
I mean, when my career has mostly been in sales. When I go out and make a sales presentation, if they choose somebody else over me, I lost.
Yeah.
There's winning and there's losing. And if they choose somebody else, they don't send me a letter with a gold star that says, you know what, I decided to buy from somebody else, but doggone it, you're still a winner and you still did a good job.
I don't want you to
that's
feel
not
bad.
True. Yeah, that's just not true.
Yeah.
And so
that's
kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because, I'm still out mingling and talking and seeing people, and I think we're largely good.
I agree with you 100%.
I don't think our country's largely bad.
Yeah.
I think we're largely good. And we're just kind of being toyed with and distracted and played with, and it's sad to me.
I agree with you.
It really is.
I often say on here, to me, the number one thing that is missing, the scarcest commodity for people is awareness. And I see this in just like, I see this every day when I leave the gym. I'm driving my truck nice and slow through the mall, and somebody's on their phone just fixing about to walk in front. And I'm like, I don't know. Back in the day when when I'm crossing the street, I always watch for cars because I don't.
Right.
People, just the awareness, the simple things. How do you cross the street and hope the car is looking out for you?
Right. Yeah. There's a song, a Big Daddy Loud song on fake news called Screens. And it's
about
our attempt
that.
at doing punk rock, and it's just too many screens, too many distractions,
Well, thanks, man. I mentioned earlier you grew and then sold a successful HVAC, that's air conditioned plumbing company in the Topeka, Kansas area. Throughout this whole time, you were recording music, playing gigs regionally. Was there ever a time early on, maybe, where there was a fork in the road and you had to choose between, on a full-time basis, music and business? And what prompted you to choose one over the other? And that being said, I want to point out that you've done more recording than any random 10 to 15 artists in total combined. So in no way am I saying Vaughn, why don't you do more work? I'm just curious because you're so passionate about music and you've done so much, and yet you've obviously been super successful. So I'm more curious about what your path was than anything else.
Well, the fear of failure, and I like to eat. So, music, you got to understand that you're in Emporia, Kansas. And while my parents were really supportive, my dad wasn't necessarily supportive when the one time that I brought up toward the end of high school about maybe trying to go somewhere and do something musically. And it wasn't that he was cruel about it or didn't think I had the talent to do it. It was fear. It was fear of, no, you need to go to college.
Yeah.
You need to, I totally get it. I've never faulted or thought anything negative about that at all. And when it came to business, most artists that I know, most musicians or painters or whatever, are horrendously bad businessmen.
Oh, yeah.
And they get screwed over. I think I've been asked a lot of times over the years, how is it that you were a pretty good businessman and you're a pretty good songwriter? I don't know. I've always felt kind of like a shredded wheat, like the sweet, sugary side is all the artistic stuff, and the rougher side was kind of the business stuff.
Right.
I've been blessed and lucky, but also very driven. And again, this probably sounds like, well, there's a lot of positive to having been molested. There's no positive to having been molested, but I felt very driven to succeed and to be something because I felt like nothing for a long time. And to me, the two things coexisted really well. I never had that desire to be the guy on the stage. I wanted to write for other people or for TV shows always. The only thing different was when Eddie Van Halen came out, which I was in 8th grade, I think, when Van Halen 1 came out. There probably wasn't a guitar player on earth that didn't want to be Eddie Van Halen
Sure.
at that time. I mean, he was doing things that no one had ever heard. And so, yeah, did I somehow want to be on stage and be Eddie Van Halen? Absolutely. But otherwise, I never had that desire to be like a star, or I just never had that. I never wanted to go out and make it as a singer. The singing that I do is in service of, and basically my recordings are just glorified demos, trying to make the best demo I can, knowing that if someone's going to record the song, they're going to change it and do with it what they want. So I just try to make good demos, good solid, what I would call, I mean, it sounds terrible, but on my solo stuff, I often refer to them as car lots for songs. I take a group of songs and put them on an album. Sometimes I try to kind of put a theme or central theme in there.
You have themes to your records, man.
Yeah. But mostly they're car lots for songs, so that if somebody comes along and says, hey, do you have something like this? Yeah, check this thing out.
Right,
there's that. And so, I can sing good enough so that I don't embarrass myself to put those things together.
Your vocals are great. Don't knock your vocal. Your playing is, you're a hell of a guitar player, and your vocals are fine. Your vocals are totally awesome.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's just never been like, I want to be the guy, I want to be Sting or something. I never did, I just never wanted to be that. And so, even when Big Daddy Loud would go out and play, or I go play solo shows, it's not that I don't enjoy it. It's just, I just don't have that thing that people, that drive to be the star of the show. I like to be the guy in the back.
Sure. I get that.
And, but
you like to be writing the songs, and that's what you're doing.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. It's my thing. And sometimes I write these songs with other people in mind. You can kind of imagine, particularly when I was doing the Saturday Morning Originals thing.
Talk about that,
because I was putting I put a lot of pressure on myself because essentially I would get up on a Saturday morning.
This is during pandemic.
Put on a pot of coffee. Yeah. I started once the lockdown became more than the 4 to 6 weeks that they said. Once it kind of, you could tell it was going to last longer, because that was in March when they locked us down. And so about April 23rd, I think I started, and I would get up in the morning. I get up at 5:30. I always do. But I get up, put on a pot of coffee, write a song from scratch, set my iPhone up and video myself playing it the first time, and then put it straight out on my Facebook, for the Big Daddy Loud Facebook and the Last Songwriter and all that, just immediately. No editing, no nothing, just me and a guitar. And so even though I do write all the time, what I would do is play a little game with myself, and I would write, this song is going to be for, Peter Frampton, and I'm going to imagine this song is going to be for,
like you were writing it for them to play.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
And so, for example, there's, I wrote when so many artists got shut down during the pandemic, they couldn't go out and play. And it was an extra tragic situation. First off, that's how these folks make their living. The notion that you make money from records anymore is not happening.
Right,
and even as a songwriter, my royalties are, virtually non-existent anymore due to downloading and all those kinds of things. So the business model changed, and these artists, some of them really probably too old to be out doing the rigors of the road or having to be back out playing to keep money coming in. But then you have some folks, like if you looked at Willie Nelson, I mean, probably the thing that was keeping Willie Nelson going was the fact that he'd kind of been on this never-ending tour. And I saw an interview with him after the pandemic started, where he would still go out and sit in his tour bus. He would go out on the tour bus and spend his day, because that's where he was the most comfortable.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I worried about a guy like that. I mean, is he going to make it when he can't go out and do what's keeping him going? Or Peter Frampton, who was suffering from a muscular degeneration issue. He was kind of in a retirement mode. I'm playing my last few shows because I'm not going to be able to play, and now I can't even go do that because of this pandemic. Elton John, same thing. You know, he was on his retirement tour, basically the end of the road kind of thing, and now you got to stop. And those guys aren't getting any younger. So like a song like I Was, which we made a little video for, I absolutely wrote that song with 3 people in mind. I had Elton John, Willie Nelson, and Peter Frampton. And I sort of thought about all 3 of them. And then you kind of, when you get into the bridge of that song, you kind of go out to all of the artists that have had their means of making a living taken away from them. But I absolutely wrote I Was really specifically to begin with for Elton John, thinking, you know, this would be a fantastic song for him to do, and then kind of modified the lyrics a little bit to kind of think Willie Nelson could do that, even though those guys are, the 3 of those people are about as far apart musically as you could get. But that song was written with those 3 people in mind, you know, and I just did that a lot throughout that whole process. So I went up doing, I think, 55 songs.
Where, and that's on, which Facebook page is that on? Last Songwriter?
If you go to the Last Songwriter, you can see all the videos on there. You know, it's funny. I mean, it's not like there was a giant following, but I get a few hundred people. And I tell you what, if I was late, like if that thing didn't land on there by like 7:30 in the morning, I would seriously be getting private Facebook messages. Are you okay? You know, is the song coming today? You know, where's the song? Because these people were locked up at home. Even though I was just doing 1 song a week, I had at the peak, and it'll say the number on there, but, you know, 400 people or so would be watching or commenting or liking that. I was bringing some kind of pleasure to 300 or 400 people every Saturday morning. And occasionally I would do a Sunday morning bonus song. If I felt inspired before church, I would get up and write another one and put it on. And people were upset when I quit doing it, but I did it for a year. That was the whole idea.
That's a long time.
First off, I was going to just do it till the pandemic was done. And then when it was obvious that wasn't going to be done, I kind of set a year. So I think I went from April 23rd to April 25th.
Right.
You know, a Saturday to. So it wound up being 55 songs. And I turned around and recorded 2 albums worth of those. And I'll do a couple of more. So it's Saturday Morning Originals Volume 1, 2. But Volume 1 and Volume 2 is the last 2 albums that I've done. So
that's a good story. Yeah, and I could see why. Listen, people thrive on routine and reliability, and in a world where that was all gone, you were now part of their routine. So I could totally get that, man. I want to ask about some of your songs that I enjoyed, because I did listen to a good portion. You have a song on Fake News, Big Daddy Loud album from 2017, Will Any More Tomorrows? And the lyrics are, Will there be any more tomorrows? And great video accompanying that. The song's about fighting during wartime. What prompted you to write that track, and how did you put that war video footage together? How does that work?
Well, the video, again, every video has been Dan Maurer with Click Creative. I'm telling you, the guy is, and if you guys or anybody out there listening as an artist, you know, if you're looking for somebody to do a video for you, you can just look up, it's with a K, clickcreative.com. Dan does interesting stuff in that he is very observant of like scene. I'm sure this is probably other video people do this, but scene changes where it's on the beat. And he's also really, like there's an explosion scene on a bridge during any more tomorrows, and there's a turn on the drums where it's like bang, 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 and somehow that footage just lines right up, you know, bang, bang. It's very stirring. Yeah. So Dan is like, he's the stuff if you're looking for somebody to do that. And he searches out footage that is, you know, public domain or stuff that you can use. So Dan put all that together. The song, you know, there's always these threats of war. I mean, unfortunate stuff that's going on in the Ukraine right now. It's terrible, but there was stuff going on at the time I wrote that song as well. And that's just like all through the dawn of time, you know. I mean, that's just humans. Yes. They can't get out of each other's way. But I had friends that had been in the Gulf War, and we were talking, and he was talking. In fact, the two still pictures that are in that video.
Is your body?
It's his platoon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's his platoon in there. So that's what brought it up. It's like, when is somebody going to just go off? I mean, we could be there now with, Putin or whoever making threats about using nuclear weapons in this situation. But that's what inspired it. I can't remember specifically what was going on in 2017 when I wrote it, but there was some conflict or the threat of a conflict. But it's the same thing over and over and over. It's just the same big circle. But I thought that video turned out well, and I thought the lyrics came across.
Really,
right on
point, man.
Yeah.
One of your solo records, called Love from 2014. You have a song on there called Julie. It sounds like an ode to someone who's no longer with that, but it was such a poignant song. It could have been just as easily about someone who is vibrant and alive. And I don't know whether it was about someone who's no longer with you, or, maybe it was, but I thought the lyrics were really good. And you could just feel the love in that song there. What's the backstory to that?
The interesting thing is I didn't know Julie. A really, really good friend, rode with me. I'd come down to Houston, went over to see my parents, and then came over to Houston to visit a friend. And she rode with me back to Kansas, and then rode back to Houston with her aunt. And that was in April. I can't remember what year. April of 2014, I think. Julie had died, I believe, in December of 13. So it was very raw. And Julie was this friend, Marty. It was her first cousin, and they were really like sisters. And for some reason, basically the entire 12-and-a-half-hour trip from Houston back to Topeka, Marty talked about Julie. I think she just needed to. She was so upset about losing her. She hadn't really had time to deal with it. It was raw and it was fresh, and she just talked about her the entire way. And I drove the whole way. So I just tried to.
You're like making notes along the way, like mental notes, I guess?
Yeah, it just kept rolling around in my head. And I knew that I wanted to write a song, and I could use my own feeling of loss of my son. Sure. and all the songs that we had put together during the Letters for Healing and the Songs for Healing project. So I did the best I could right away and wrote out the lyrics. And I knew how to get a hold of Marty's daughter, Mackenzie. And so I sent the lyrics to her and said, could you just please proof these to see if any of the facts are off? Like, I'm pretty sure these are all the states and cities that she said she lived in. I'm pretty sure this is all the things that she was saying. If there's something that's just way off base, could you tell me? And she actually called me right back. She says, how did you do this? I mean, it's exact. Like, it's exactly right. There's not one thing that's not right. And she said, you've even got it like in the right chronological order, And I said, as soon as we got back, of course, the aunt picked up, or they left, she didn't even stay or anything. So the second they were gone, I got a piece of paper,
I just did a brain dump.
Right. Yeah. And I put a lot of work into that song. And in fact, the revised edition of the book that's coming out, we added a letter that Marty wrote to Julie.
Oh, that's cool, man.
And then that song will be added in with all of the songs. So, but yeah, that's how that came about.
Yeah, well, you did such a great job. How did I know it sounded like for someone who is not here anymore? That's just.
Yeah, she died of ovarian and breast cancer.
Oh.
Actually, her mother had died from the same thing. So
that's terrible, man. That's a beautiful, beautiful song, man. It's called Julie, and it's on Vaughn's solo record, Love, from 2014. So check that out. On the same record, you have another song called Let Love, and this was good. I thought these were clever and very appropriate lyrics. You cling too tightly to all the hurts of the past. you can't claim the blessings in the here and now. And, you know, that's a really, I think there's a lot of good wisdom in that because, you know, all of us have made mistakes, had hurt, been hurt. And you know, I always say it doesn't serve you to look in the rear view mirror.
No.
But this is an added thing of it also prevents you from, I thought it was really accurate and wise, from receiving any blessings today if you're all bound up with that stuff in the past. Was there something specific you're writing that about, or?
It was a little bit autobiographical. To believe it or not, that song I was absolutely not going to put on the record. I was going to hold it off because I wasn't happy with how it turned out. And Jim Barnes, who is the drummer for Big Daddy Loud, but also the guy that I've recorded with the last, 11, 12 years, 10 years anyway. He's like, are you kidding me? I think that's the best song of the,
it's a great song.
The bunch.
Yeah.
The lyric really touched him, and he said, you've got to put that on there. I'm like, oh, man, you know. But Dr. Farrell Higgins, the guy, you know, he was always one to say, you know, if you keep hanging on to all this stuff that happened and you keep focusing on that stuff, you're going to miss the wonderful things that are coming at you now. And so that's kind of where that came from. But, you know, listening to it now, I mean, it was a good decision to put it on the record, but it almost didn't make the cut for sure.
Yeah, it's a lovely song, man. I really like. As soon as I heard those lyrics, because I'm always trying to release things from the past, because I'm a good guy no one beats me up as effectively as I can, you know. So I'm always looking for things like that, and you know, I know it's never good to look in the rearview mirror, and I really work hard at that. But hearing stuff like this is like, now not only am I cheating, am I not letting something go? Now I'm actually robbing myself.
Yeah, robbing yourself of the joy
of today. You know, so yeah, I thought it was a great trend. My
mentor always, I don't think he originated this, but my mentor always says, you know, you did the best you could with what you knew, and when you knew better, you did better.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people who know better but don't do better. But I think most of us, you know, hopefully as we learn better and know better, we do better.
Yeah, I think so, man. I really strongly, having spoke to close to 900 people, I feel very confident about that.
You know, losing a son at 21 years old, I can tell you, it was over in an instant for him, and I'm certain that he wasn't thinking that morning, okay, well, this is it for me. You know, he was thinking about the weekend coming up, and he was thinking about his girlfriend, and it was just over. And that changed my perspective about things, in that I don't spend a lot of time or rent a lot of space in my head to yesterday. You know, I can't even change what I did 5 minutes ago, let alone 5 days ago. I try not to spend a lot of time there. I also don't spend a lot of time thinking about tomorrow or next week.
Right.
I might not wake up tomorrow. So, and I fail all the time, but what I strive to do is wake up and be the best version of Von Kopfman that I can be today. Mm. And, you know, some days I'm successful at that, and some days I fail miserably, but that's always the goal when I get up in the morning, is just to be appreciative of what I've got today and try to be the best version of myself that I can be. And don't worry about the rest of it. There's nothing I can do about any of the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I can control what I'm doing right now.
You know, I agree with that, and I have the same challenges, and I always go back to something that somebody, I've had a lot of people talk about getting sober on the show. I've had people in my family that are addicts and various things. But I always go back to something someone told me. He said, right now, this minute, I'm okay. And, you know, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. And even if you have to tell yourself that, I'm speaking for me, even when I have to tell myself that 7 or 8 or 9, 10 times a day, that's good, because it keeps me, you know, yes. Right now, I'm okay. So why do I look for trouble? You know?
Absolutely.
So I struggle with that too.
Amen.
Yeah, amen on that. You had a really cool song on your solo record, Like a Breath from 2015, called Hell of a Thing. And it was really interesting. It was about watching your parents age and the really different roles that brings. And was that written about something you experienced with your parents, or?
Yeah, I'm blessed that my parents are still both alive and still in reasonably good health. And but my dad always says, getting old isn't for sissies.
True.
That actually kind of came from my dad when his mom passed, and just before she passed, he said she'd broken her hip and she'd been in a nursing home, and it was just not good. And he told me when we were going up to see her, he said it's a hell of a thing when the roles are reversed, and you're having to be the caregiver. And it stuck with me, when he said that. And the song I didn't write till quite a bit later, when, my parents were, especially then, they were in a lot better health, in 2015. But you start thinking about that, as they're getting older, and it's just a big circle, and, they're changing your diaper, and then I'm not there yet, but at some point you might be changing theirs, and it's a
hell of a thing.
I tried to be as poignant.
It's pretty cool.
It's a hell of a thing.
Your dad said.
And that's I was really, really happy with how that song turned out. And I was also really happy. I was trying to do my best James Jamerson, Paul McCartney bass playing on that. It's probably the best bass I've ever played in my life is on that.
It's a great track, top to bottom, man. I really liked it. I'm glad I asked you about it because it was very catchy, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. You talk a lot about faith in a lot of your music and about God. And I was curious, what do these things mean to you, and have either or both of them influenced your life and maybe decisions you've made or not made?
Yeah. I wasn't brought up going to church, but, we would pray every night before we went to bed. And I got saved in 1985. And so, I do have a strong faith. There was a while there, a few albums I did. The first solo album that I did, or first recording really, was a straight up contemporary Christian pop record. So, I do believe in God, and I absolutely have faith and have a relationship with Christ. I can't imagine going through life without that, especially, losing a son or some of the things that have happened. Gosh, I don't know what I would have done without that. I don't try to go around and bash people over the head with what I believe. If somebody asks, I'm certainly happy to share that with them. Right. I have steered away from doing overtly Christian songs for a lot of years now. And some of that was just disappointment with that genre of music. I had the opportunity to meet and interact with some of the folks that were pretty big in the contemporary Christian community. They were, some of them, not all of them, but some of them were just as crazy as Waylon Jennings, or just as, they were doing just as many drugs and girls and stuff as anybody else. And so I wanted to get away from being
Don't do as I do as I say.
Yeah. I just, and I'm not throwing them all under the bus, because I had the chance to get to know Rich Mullins, who was absolutely, he was who he was, and he's written songs that are sang in every, probably, some church somewhere every Sunday. He was the real deal. Many of them are. But I didn't want to continue to write stuff. I didn't want to put myself in a box and just write that. So I still do write songs that way occasionally. But yeah, I absolutely have faith, and it's gotten me through a lot in my life, for sure.
Oh, thank you. Musically, what would you say the top 3 musical experiences you've had?
putting together the Songs for Healing record was, and shout out to Jim Barnes for all the work that he did with me on that. That was very, very difficult and very rewarding, because I was essentially taking letters that people had written that are in my book. I would talk to them about genre, what genre of music they might be interested in. And then I was trying to use as many of their words from their letter, put it in the genre that they wanted, and put as little of me in it as I possibly could, and make a song out of that. Something
I didn't
that
realize
worked. And it was very, very challenging to do. And also, I still had all the raw emotion. I mean, this was right after having lost my own son. So you still are dealing with all the emotion of that, which probably helped me to a certain degree, because I certainly could understand and relate. But probably one of my top 3 things that I'm the proudest of is just getting through that and being able to put that together. Again, Jim helped me a lot with that.
Hang on, let me just show people what you're talking about. In Letters for Healing, there's a CD in the back called Songs for Healing. And that's what Vaughn is talking about, putting this together based on speaking with a particular individual or family that wrote one of these letters, and, you know, asking them the questions, which genre. So I just wanted to give people a context.
Yeah. Now, by the way, the revised edition of the book won't have the CD, but it'll actually have a link, and you'll be able to go, because nowadays hardly any car even has a CD player anymore. So
it's like a QR code or something.
Yeah, you'll have a code, and you'll be able to go to a link, and you'll be able to listen to the songs. And the electronic version of the book, the songs will be embedded where the lyrics are. So, yeah. So, but I was very proud of how that turned out.
That was like your gift to each one of these people, basically.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, nobody paid anything
really
to
cool.
be in that book. You know, didn't pay for any of the recording or anything. I wanted to just try to help people and help myself.
Yeah.
You know, at the same time.
Yeah.
So that was something I was very proud of. A number of songs that I have done for, and you can kind of bundle all that together. So if you think about The Real Me, for example, which is about handicapped people, or you think about the song Flint, which is a pretty hard rock song about the water issue in Flint, Michigan. I actually got praise from, a couple of artists from Michigan, well-known artists that really gave me some praise for that song, some props for that song. So, but I think the ability that I have to put something very specific in that needs to be addressed into a song, and so I kind of lump all those things in there together. And then I don't know, we did a big concert at a big amphitheater for the homeless vets. Big Daddy Loud did, and it was a combination of an organization called Homes for Vets and a thing called Pets for Vets, and they would take shelter animals and get them to homeless veterans and then get them in a place to live. So they were getting companionship and shelter at the same time. And the turnout was huge, and we were the headliner and of that. It's a cool old amphitheater that was from the 30s that was, in this beautiful park. And I was very proud to be a part of that.
That is a really cool.
Able to we wrote a song specifically for it called "Give Me Your Hand," and so we showcased that for all these veterans. And even though I'm not a veteran myself, both of my parents were in the Air Force, and it's something that I have a real passion for. So yeah, that's certainly in the top 3.
Music, guitars, man. Let's talk about gear for a couple of minutes. What's your go-to? I think I know what you're going to say, but what's your go-to guitar right now, and what other 2 guitars would round out your top 3?
The guitar that I'm probably most known for is a 1981 Strat.
The green one, surf green.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the fast, funny story about that. The guitar had actually been urinated on.
Yeah, you told me that. I couldn't believe it.
And fell behind an old console record player. The guy that bought it original, it had been relegated to his lesson guitar. He was just given lessons with it. He'd bought a better guitar, and he was a single dad raising his son, and the son had, I don't know how, but it had peed on the thing, and it had fallen behind this console record player. And he was a good housekeeper. It wasn't that his house was a mess, but there's this smell. We couldn't figure out what the smell was, and we're searching around, and we find this guitar had fallen behind there. And the pickups were corroded, and the bridge, and they had F-tuners on the back, and it had run up the neck because it was kind of head down. Anyway, he said, just throw it away. Just throw it away. And I said, well, I'll swap you. I had another Strat of some kind. I swapped him, and he said, what are you going to do with it? I said, I don't know. I'll do something with it.
Something about it just was intriguing you. It challenged you.
Yeah. So I just completely rebuilt the guitar. I had a guy that does custom paint, did really high-end custom cars. Back then, there wasn't any really internet necessarily. We wrote to Fender. I sent Polaroid pictures of the headstock.
So
and the
funny. I wrote to Fender.
And they sent me all the paint codes of it. I took pictures, took the neck off, and took pictures of the dates, on the body and the neck. And because everything all the pickups, the pick guard, the tuners, the bridge, everything like that had to go to the trash. I just had a neck and a body. But I told them what I was wanting to do. And it was Olympic white originally, and I said, you can tell by the serial number. And they said, well, the serial number has nothing to do with the color. So they sent me all the paint codes. And I went over to Harry Rohr was his name, and we started just looking at, and they also on the paint codes, it had how many there were in 1981 of each color.
Well, that's interesting.
And the least amount was the color I chose, which I love. That's that
really
color.
Cool.
It's not really it's not seafoam green.
It's not seafoam green. It's not surf green, but it's like those are the closest. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the color of a 1971 Dodge, those flat nose Dodge vans. It was a Dodge. A lot of the Fender colors were car colors.
Yes, that I'm familiar with.
Harry was going through, and we were looking at colors, and we both like, oh, that's it. That's the one. So it is an actual color that was available in '81 on a Strat, but Harry did it, repainted it, and then I was really into Strat Pluses at the time, and so I set it up kind of like that. Leo Posh, who's a wonderful luthier, but he was working for Mass Street Music at the time. We did the red, silver, and blue Fender lay sensors with the TBX, because I had to put all new pots, new jack, and everything. So all the electronics are kind of set up like a deluxe Strat Plus from that time. It has the locking tuners like a deluxe Strat Plus, but then a bone nut. It has a giant brass block under the bridge and titanium saddles. So, but it's been, the only thing I've changed was those saddles a few years ago. But otherwise, that guitar got finished the week before my twins were born, so 32 years ago.
That's so cool, man.
It's when it got, and that's the one everybody kind of knows me for.
Right. That's going to be, for people listening, the picture on the YouTube video will be Vaughn with that guitar.
Yeah, it's my number one.
Yeah.
I have a 94 Telecaster that I've totally redone. It's got Joe Barton pickups and a Joe Barton bridge, Stuart McDonald compensated titanium saddles, and then Callahan makes a 4-way switch setup with better pots and stuff. So you got bridge, then you got bridge and neck in phase, then bridge and neck out of phase, and then neck. I play that one all the time, and then electric guitars, and then I got a 93 Parker Fly that I've had since 93. And acoustic guitars, Eastman, who I'm an artist for, I do have a custom shop Eastman SB59 that I'm gifting to a wonderful friend. It's an amazing one-off guitar Otto D'Ambrosio put together. Les Paul type guitars don't work for me. I have such short fingers, they just don't work. But on acoustic guitars, I have a AC 622, I think it is, Eastman. It was a prototype. Now they do make that guitar. It is unbelievable. If you don't know about Eastman guitars, the price is amazing. The quality is off the chain.
It really is.
I mean, they just make amazing instruments. And so, and it's that thing. I mean, I swear I could throw it across the street and it would be in tune.
But you're much ballsier than I am.
It's a very, very musical guitar. You know, you would think, well, that means it doesn't sound good. It is absolutely breathtakingly beautiful guitar sounding wise. And then I have a Leo Posh 13 fret little triple O type thing that he made specifically for me. That's
what does that mean?
Kind
a 13th fret.
Well, most guitars, you know, are either 12 frets clear of the body or 14 frets clear of the body. This is 13 frets clear of the body, so it's a little different. It sets your bridge back into the belly of the guitar just a little bit further, so it's a little richer sound. This thing is it's blue. It actually has some of my son's ashes in the headstock, and it's his favorite color was cobalt blue, and so it was totally built as kind of a. I used to have a Everly Brothers Gibson that had the stars on the fingerboard, and my son Jacob just loved that guitar. And so this has got stars on the fingerboard, and it's the color that he liked, and it's got some of his ashes in the headstock. So
those are pretty meaningful.
Yeah. The only other thing maybe we would mention, I have a 1968 Fender Newporter, which was the first decent acoustic guitar that I had. A friend of my father's actually gave it to me. That has a bolt-on neck. Roger Ramaselli, who was the designer of a lot of Rickenbacker guitars, is who designed that for Fender. So it's basically got the neck of a Strat on an acoustic guitar. I've written, no kidding, probably 2,000 songs on that guitar, to the point where the neck is literally wore out. It's hard. You have to be very careful or you'll pull the strings off the neck. But I spent a bunch of money buying a really expensive case. That guitar is like one of my absolute most valuable possessions. And but I don't play it much anymore because it's not delicate. I mean, you can still play it, but the neck is literally wore out. It's just absolutely wore out. I played that guitar until it's just literally wore out.
Are you afraid to like restore, get it redone, or you don't want to, or?
I just don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to do a refret or any. I just want to. You can play it like you just wouldn't take it out and play it.
Yeah.
But you can. But yeah, it's an awesome guitar.
That's cool, man. Those are some cool guitars. Yeah. I've had. Not tons of people, maybe 4 or 5 people mention Joe Barden pickups. I've never heard them.
They're amazing. Danny Gatton helped him develop those, and Danny Gatton was just, it's a tragedy that he took his own life, but he was amazing. And so that's what's in it. Is they're the Danny Gatton set of Joe Bardens, and then Barden makes a bridge plate for a Tele that's a little different, and so that's what's all on there. Yeah, it's a cool guitar. That Telecaster's an amazing guitar.
It's so funny, man. Your whole energy when I ask you about guitars, you're like, it's just a magic thing, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Where would I be in my life without a guitar? I mean, I don't even know. I mean, my kids will tell you that I used to tell them Brownie is what I call that 68 Newporter.
Right.
But they knew if the house catches fire, the only thing of Dad's that you need to get is that guitar.
That's funny.
Get it out of the house, So
Brownie.
Yeah, they know.
Give me your top 3 Desert Island discs in no particular order, and just for this minute, because that could change.
Okay. First thing on my head would be Rainy Day Music from the Jayhawks. There's a John Collages. I don't know if you know him. He has an album that he hadn't put an album out.
Is that the one you just sent me?
Yeah,
I have it on cue, man. I haven't listened to it yet. John Klages.
Klages. The Fabulous Twilight is the name of that record. I just listen to it all the time. And then number 3 would be, I'm going to give you a tie. Probably the Elton John record. Captain Fantastic, and then probably Split Lip Rayfield, On My Way. I don't know if Split Lip Rayfield's got a pretty big national following. They're like heavy metal.
Rayfield?
I've
never heard of them. They're so cool.
Heavy metal bluegrass. It's amazing. But they've been around like 25 years. And like Billy Strings, when he won a Grammy or whatever here a year ago, he actually stood up and gave a nod to Split Lip Rayfield. I mean,
and what's the record that you like? That I want to check this.
On My Way.
On My Way.
On My Way. I was lucky on Saturday Morning Originals Volume 1. Eric Martis, who's the banjo player and guitar player sometimes for Split Lip, but is one of the original members of Split Lip Rayfield. We recorded Volume 1 as a band with no rehearsal in 4 hours, 13 songs in 4 hours. The Randy Wills that owns that recording studio said he'd never done, he's had a studio since the 60s. He's never had anybody do that. They had the videos to look at, and I made just lyric sheet with a chord chart that I gave to piano player, bass player, drummer, and Eric Martis, who, depending on the song, played pedal steel, either banjo or electric guitar. No rehearsal.
That's really cool.
I said, you guys all play in cover bands, or you're used to learning songs and going to the gig. Just treat it like that. Friday night, we loaded in the equipment. Saturday morning, we showed up, 8 o'clock. By noon, 12:30 or so, the record was done.
That's
I just
awesome.
sang and played acoustic guitar live. That is the most fun experience musically I've ever had in my life. And I had good players on there. The guy that played the bass, who wasn't known as a bass player, was just off the chain.
That's the one I asked you about, right? That bass playing on that record is phenomenal.
It made the songs. But then to have, and Jim, I was insistent that Jim, the guy that I've recorded with all these years, he played the drums, and we had to be situated so we could see each other because we know each other so well. Even though we didn't rehearse, he knows what I'm going to do, and I know what he's going to do. So basically, we just set up. I just tell him start, stops, who's going to take the solo. We do 2 versions of it, move on to the next song. But to have Eric Martis, of all people, agree to play on that record.
That's cool, man.
That would be like that's almost as good as having Elton John record one of my songs. I'm telling you, Eric Martis he's a monster. He's just amazing.
Very cool. I want to talk about Jacob. In 2011, he had a tragic accident while he was working. And first of all, I've said this before. I'll just tell you again. I'm so sorry that you had to go through. I cannot imagine. It's like, one of those things. You can't imagine what it's like being pregnant unless you're a woman and you had a baby. You can't imagine what it's like going with you through. There's no way you can put yourself in those shoes. And I'm so sorry. So sorry, Vaughn. If you could talk about this, any aspect that you like, maybe how you dealt with or didn't deal with it, and what about this crisis or this tragedy led you to write the Letters for Healing book and the For the Survivors? And feel free to whatever you want to say and not say.
My kids were raised in a little town of 3,000 people, Burlington, Kansas.
Oh, wow.
And it's what it's known for is Wolf Creek Nuclear Power Plant is there. In the 18-month period or 2-year period prior to losing Jacob, my boys and daughter had lost 5 of their friends. One of them literally about not even 2 weeks before my son, one about 2 weeks before that. And these are all of them except one were from Burlington, and one was from Waverly, which is 14 miles up the road. And those
you have letters from there. That was the first set of letters in the book.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. The young man that was from Waverly, his parents and I grew up together, went to school together, so we knew each other. But all these guys knew each other.
Dude, I got goosebumps here, man.
Friends.
This is so not shit you should be hearing and talking about.
It was crazy. But at every turn, you would go to the funeral of these young men, and you think you can imagine what that would be like to lose your kid. You cannot imagine what it is until it happens to you. And at every turn, you go to one of these funerals, and you're thinking, thank God, I feel so horrible for them. Thank God it wasn't mine. When Jacob and Jordan went to Ben Burke's funeral, he had died just literally, the funeral was just a couple of weeks before Jacob died. When they came home, Jacob was so angry because he didn't think that the funeral was very good in terms of who Ben was and talking about Ben. It was he felt like it was almost like the preacher was, it was my turn to do a funeral. And so, he was really angry. And
Was that
he
the
just
kid that
blurted out.
I'm sorry, was that the kid that
Drowned.
Yeah.
He drowned. So he blurted out to Jordan and I, said, if something happens to me, this is what I want. And I said, Jacob, I do not want to have this conversation.
Yeah.
And he said, Dad, I do dangerous work. And he said, if something happens to me, and he literally spit out, I want to be cremated. I want to be in a box. A friend of mine had passed away a couple of years before, Richard Felipe, and Jacob had gone with me to the funeral. And Richard was just in a pine box, and people had signed the box. And he literally said, I want a box like Richard had. I want people to write on it. I don't want anybody to be dressed up. I just want people to come up and tell stories if they want to come up and tell funny stories. I don't want a preacher of any sort. And he said, and there's a song that I had written for Jacob, and he said, and I want you to sing that song.
Oh my God.
And I said, I do not want to have this conversation. But I said, I can tell you this, if something happens to you, I certainly won't be up there singing a song.
Oh.
And I don't want to talk about this anymore. And 2 weeks later, he was gone. And, had he not told me that, I'm sure I would have had a traditional type funeral service. But Jordan and I, tried to remember what it was that he said. And then we talked to my daughter. My daughter was away at college. And we just decided we would try to honor as best we could remember what he said. And, I did do a song, and my daughter, my son, and his mother participated as well. And we did the funeral as he asked, and we had people come up and talk. And the whole thing is really basically kind of a blur, But how the book came about, how the website came about, he was killed. He still lived with me, but he was over in Missouri working, and they had flown him to the University of Missouri. And there's a little social worker there. And as a dad, you're thinking, I can fix something. I can fix this, And I'm asking, well, how do I get him home? What? She said, well, it was a work-related accident, so there will have to be an autopsy before. She said, you'll then have to get with a funeral home because he'll have to be embalmed. You can't cross state lines without the body being embalmed. She said, sir, I don't know the circumstance, but it being work-related, you may want to consult with an attorney here in Missouri before you do anything. And I'm thinking in my head, I don't know an attorney here. I don't know a funeral home here. But she didn't have any resources. Bless her heart, she was doing the best she could, but that's all she had for me. So one of the things that I decided driving home from there, because it was about a 4-hour drive, was that somehow I'm going to have resources so that, a social worker or a policeman, a fireman, an EMT, a hospice can give a card out and go to a website and at least have some kind of resources on there. Now, I didn't know at the time there is another website called Compassionate Friends, and they do a great job. Nothing against what they do. My model is a little different. The next thing after the revised book comes out is I'm going to revamp the website, because to be honest with you, it's not a very attractive website. It's just facts. But I don't have any mechanism to accept a donation. I don't profit in any way from that. I don't want a donation. I don't solicit donations. There are a lot of free resources on there. There's resources that you purchase, but you're not purchasing them from me. You're purchasing them from whoever. So it was just resources. And there's everything from kind of what to look for when it's time to do a funeral, for example, what to look for if you need to get a hold of an attorney, to avoid an ambulance chaser. Because I had those people call.
Oh my God.
When it came out in the news that Jacob died,
That has got to be like revolting to get a phone call.
It's a bad deal.
I mean,
I had Psychology Today magazine. I got a hold of them, and they helped me with a resource where no matter where you live, if you want to go get some counseling, it's not just a list of psychologists in every state, but it's psychologists and counselors that deal specifically with grief.
Bereavement.
And it's not just a name and a contact, but it's got a little biographical information. So if you're in Pocatello, Idaho, and you lose a child, you can just click in Idaho, Pocatello, and there's a list of the people in your area that provide that type of counseling. So, that's how that came about. How the book came about was my son and I was already been going to Dr. Farrell Higgins for a number of years over other stuff. And I suggested that Jordan, my sons were identical twins. So I suggested that he might want to go talk to him independently. And he came home one day after seeing him and he said, I'm not going back. And I said, well, that's totally up to you. He said, he wants me to write a letter to Jacob. He said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I said, Jordan, whatever the therapist tells you, those are suggestions. Those aren't something that you have to do. He said, well, I'm not going to do it. It's ridiculous. I said, that's fine. About a week later, there was a letter on the dining room table. He had written him a letter. And I said, do you think I thought you were going to do that. He said, well, I did. And I said, do you think it helped? He said, it did help. It did help. So I asked Dr. Farrell Higgins about that. I said, how come you didn't suggest I write a letter? What is this? I mean, how does that work? And he said, well, it's narrative therapy. And he explained to me why that works. Handwriting a letter, not typing a letter, but handwriting. You're really able to get emotion out, and explain why that is. And he also explained that he was talking to me about, and when you read the letter of someone who's experienced a similar tragedy, it's called cognitive processing, or it's part of cognitive processing therapy, and it helps you read a letter that somebody that's gone through a similar traumatic experience. So I wrote a letter, and I encouraged my daughter and my parents and my sister to write a letter to Jacob, and it was really helpful. So I reached out to those other parents of those other 5 young men in our community and said, I don't know if this is something you've heard of or if you've had any experience with it, but if you've sought any kind of counseling, but it really helps. And so I shared that with them. In the meantime, Jordan had asked me to turn his letter into a song. He said, could you do that? And so I did. And in fact, Jordan really co-wrote that because he changed a couple of things that I had done and made some suggestions. And so he mentioned to a couple of these other families that I had done that. And so they all had written a letter after I called them, and a couple of them called me and said, would you turn our song into a letter?
Your letter into a song.
The first letter into a song.
Yeah.
So the first one I did was a song called True Cowboy for Skylar Hively. And because that's what he was. He was a farrier, a guy that works on
horses. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And shoot horses and broke horses for people. So I did that one. And then the other families found out, and they all basically asked, could you make our letter into a song? So the book started out to be for 5 families, or 6, counting my own. And it was just going to be a booklet. I was just going to put their letters in, put the song lyrics in, put a CD in, and I was just going to give one copy to each of us. And one of them must have shared with a family member or friend, because I actually got a call from a guy in Florida who said, hey, I heard what you're doing. I lost my daughter, 6 years ago. Is there any chance that I could write a letter and that you might make that into a song? And it just kind of exploded from there. I used to get Men's Journal, I think it was, and I never read any of Men's Journal except the back page. It was called The Last Word. I don't know if they still do that or not, but they would take different athletes, musicians, actors. They might be still current or they might be retired, but they would essentially ask them the same 10 questions. One of the questions which was, how should a man handle grief? And I happened to be reading, and it was Greg Louganis, the Olympic diver. And he said, he handled grief by writing letters. He hand wrote letters, and that he would seal them up in an envelope, and he would carry them around until he felt like he'd processed it and dealt with it. And then he would have a little ceremony where he would burn the letter. So he never mailed the letter.
Yeah, right.
And it wasn't just the people that he lost. It was maybe people that were still alive, but he had an issue. And then he would have a ceremony and he would burn these letters. So I actually knew that one of his parents had recently died. I found his manager. I think her name was Megan Thompson at that time. I found the phone number and I called. I said, you know, if he'd be interested in writing a letter in the book, we wouldn't even have to use his full name. You know, I'm not trying to do this, you know,
to leverage. Yeah, right.
But we could, you know, she said, well, let me find out. And Greg called me. He was like in Rio or someplace judging a Red Bull diving competition. And he said, you know, I would be interested in that. Do you have anybody writing the foreword to the book? And at that point, Dr. Farrell Higgins was going to write the foreword. And I called Dr. Farrell Higgins and he said, I'll just write the afterword, you know. And so Greg said, I'd like to write the foreword to the book. And he did. And actually, when I was first promoting the book and went on NPR, he actually went on with me.
Oh, that's so nice.
Which was neat. He's a really sweet guy. But so the book really was born from the tragedy of these 5 families in a little town, and it just took on a life of its own. And so I wound up signing it with Kansas City Star Books, and they did a wonderful job with it. So that's how it came to be. I wanted to just take the tragedy of losing my son and try to turn that into something positive for other people, you know, and to try to help other people. And it was helping me at the same time.
Sure.
You know, writing that book was my own therapy. So, you know, that was the whole impetus of it.
Man, that was very admirable that you did that. I was really blown away when I read that about you, that I thought, you know, again, I can't imagine what this is like, but to take a tragedy and then say, how can I help others when helping yourself is tough enough? I mean, that was, you know, that shows what kind of a human being you are. And that was what one of the things that attracted me to want to talk with you. I have, you know, I don't like to really make this about me, but I do have an experience writing a letter, and it is very therapeutic. I had a horrible childhood, and I was ready to, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was ready to forgive my parents, specifically more so my father, who is the primary abuser. And I wrote him a letter basically saying, like, you know, why did you do these things? You know, but it was like really specific, you know. And then when I did the same thing with Greg did, I burned it. I never mailed it. And then shortly afterwards, it allowed me to forgive him. Like, and it was, which you talk about, you said something earlier about holding on to the past. I said the same thing. I said, man, I wish I would have done this 25 years ago. I feel about 1 million pounds lighter. I've been carrying this around. My father don't give a shit about this. This was like me carrying around.
It was for you.
Yeah. It had nothing. Yeah. Like nobody cares, you know, it's just me. I was like, God, I wish I had done this. So that is a very valid thing to do.
Yeah. I wrote a letter to the guy that molested me.
Did you?
And burned it. Yeah. And, forgiving him was very difficult to do, but I did because I didn't mail it to him. You know, I burned it. I wouldn't even know where to find the guy or if he's even still alive. But I did that for me. You know, I thought you need to put your money where your mouth is. You know, you wrote a book about writing letters and about and about how that works, and you need to put your money where your mouth is, and it does work. You know, these letters. I tell you a quick story. How powerful that is. One of the people that put a letter in the book to their son, he had committed suicide. And he actually committed suicide after having breakfast with them and acting as if everything was fine. Literally went home and killed himself. No note, no warning, no troubles, had a good job, had a good girlfriend, no explanation. And when she wrote her letter, you know, the first few lines, the letters are just perfect and the writing is beautiful. You know, dear, I am so sorry, you know, that you couldn't tell us what was wrong. And I'm so, and then it goes into this where the letters themselves are taking up 3 lines and they are literally almost scratched through the paper and you can't hardly read them. And without You know, it's how the F could you effing do this to our family and to your brothers and sisters? What the F is the matter with you? And then she's upset at herself for yelling at him in the letter. And it goes back to these beautifully spaced, and I shouldn't have yelled, and I'm so sorry. But you can absolutely feel that raw emotion on the paper in the letter. You know, if you try to type those things, you got spell check and you got
you got to write by hand. Yeah,
you've got to write them by hand. But that letter was the perfect example of how it works. You know, that you can just see the sadness, and you can see the rage, and you can see the brokenness. It works. Yeah, it really works.
It really does. You know, I've been writing postcards and letters to my children, and to a lesser degree, my wife, for 30 years. And my son, I remember my older boy, he had this really toxic relationship, and he called me up one day and he was saying, "Dad, she's going to throw out my box of letters from you. What am I going to do?" And I said, "All right." I was horrified for him, but I was like, wow, I don't know what this means that I'm sending him. It's just, "Hey, Nick, I love you, and what's going on?" Or, and I still do. And my daughter moved out recently. I said, "Well, you know what that means?" She goes, "What?" I said, "You get to join the postcard club." Because now I got to send you.
There you go.
Yeah. And so I send her postcards once a month now. It's cool.
Hey, it says a lot that your son had kept all of those.
I was shocked. It's nothing I expected.
He goes back and he reads them, and he knows that Dad loves him. And he knows that Dad's there. I asked my dad the other day, what's it like for both of your parents to be gone? I had really good grandparents, and Dad said, "Vaughn," he said, "it's the strangest feeling." He said, "You're going to probably lose your parents. You're going to lose us." He said, "I hadn't lived home with my parents since I joined the Air Force in 1960 or whatever.
Sure.
I'd never lived back home with them. But knowing that you don't have a home to go to, you always know if your parents are alive that you've got a home, that you got people that accept you and love you unconditionally.
Right.
You always have a place you can go. I don't have that anymore." And he said, "It's the strangest feeling. Even though your mother and I have a home, and obviously we could come to your house or your sister's house, but you just have this feeling like you can't go home. There is no going home now." And I thought that was an interesting way to put it. And it's probably the truth. I mean, it's probably what it is,
Well, my kids are all out of the house, and they've all come home at some point in time. And now I think they're out for good, but they're more than welcome to come back if they need to.
Of course. They're always your kids.
Yeah, although I was happy they were essential workers during the pandemic. They're welcome to come home, but one thing I read in your book I thought it was really interesting. I talked to my wife about this. It said something to the effect that never assume that enough time, I'm paraphrasing you, never assume enough time has passed that someone is over their loss. And that was very helpful to me as far as making sure, like, if I meet somebody, that I don't lose that awareness with someone who might have suffered loss even years ago. That was really helpful. Can you talk about that as well?
Yeah. Well, for example, people that lose a child, the divorce rate is ridiculously high, like in the 60% range. And that's because they don't, we all really go through the 5 stages of grief, but we don't go through them at the same time or in the same order.
Yeah, right.
And so people, the husband will think she's not grieving enough, or she's grieved too long, or he's not grieving enough, or he's not crying enough, or he's not. It's an individual
journey. Very interesting, man.
It's an individual journey, and we're all going down. We're going to hit the same 5 markers because that's just the way the human body works. But we're not going to hit they're not in the same order. There's no correct order, and so. There is no getting over it. Where that came from, I have a friend back in Topeka. She was 80 or 81 years old, and her son died at 62 years old of a heart attack. And she was part of the Red Hat Club there. They would go to lunch and all that stuff. And she called and wanted to know if I could come by and have a cup of coffee with her. And I did. And she said, my friends don't understand. You know, she said, it's been 2 months and they're upset because I don't want to go to lunch with them. And they just can't believe that I'm not over it. I mean, after all, he was 62 years old. It wasn't like I lost a child. And she just wept and she said, that's still my baby.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And I said, yeah, absolutely. It is still your baby. And, you know, no matter, my youngest is 32. I still worry about my 32-year-old, and I worry about my daughter and my son-in-law all the time.
Absolutely.
I talk to them all the time.
Sure.
It never goes away. Yeah. I'm sure my parents still worry about me. The other thing I would say, too, I know this isn't necessarily part of your question, but you need to choose your words when you're dealing with somebody that's lost, and particularly a child. You know, for example, my son was a welder. You know, people don't know what to say, so sometimes they say the most inconsiderate, stupidest things, not meaning to. I had more than one person tell me, you know, well, God needed a welder. If you believe in God and you believe that God created everything that we see, I'm pretty sure God didn't need a welder.
Yeah,
but they don't know what to say, so they just say silliness. What you really need to say is, I'm available.
Yeah, man.
I'm here.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have. It's not possible for them to fix your problems anyway.
Right. What happens to you in any situation, whether you've lost a parent or a child or a friend, or if you went through a divorce, which is like a death, or you've lost your job, whatever it is, you got a couple of weeks where you're surrounded by people. In fact, you're almost smothered by people. And then all of a sudden, in 2 weeks, everybody's life goes back to normal. Except yours.
Yeah.
And now you're the most alone you've ever been. And then people start feeling either guilty because they haven't called you, or they feel self-conscious about saying the name of your child. So they will do everything but talk about your child, for example, because they think, well, if I say Jacob's name, he's going to get upset. Well, they don't understand. The most beautiful thing you can hear is that name.
Yeah.
You know, and I would just tell people that if you know someone who's gone through something like this, when they really need you is 3 weeks down the road, a month down the road. Just pick up the phone and say, hey, I was thinking about Jacob, or I was thinking about you. I just want to check in and see how you're doing. You want to get a cup of coffee. Don't be afraid to say their name, but try not to say things that just come across as tacky because you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
The only thing you have to say is, I'm here and I'm available. And if that means just coming and sitting on the couch and we don't talk at all, just somebody to sit with you, I'm here. That's what you really need in a situation like that.
And that is really great advice. I mean, honestly, that's beautiful. I mean, thank you. I think a lot of people could benefit from that. It's funny because I have a very close friend, and his brother passed a while ago. And I was talking with my wife about his brother, a story that my buddy told me. It was a very funny story. And I was not sure if I should share with my friend. And I said, oh, I was thinking about your brother because, you know, I was driving by this thing with Ann and it reminded me of this. So I told the story and it was really funny. And I was really trying to be sensitive to his reaction. In the beginning, I felt like he was happy that I was talking about him. It was a funny story. But at the end, I sensed his sadness, but I knew it had nothing to, I felt it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with losing his brother.
You did the right thing.
Okay. Yeah. Cause
you did the right thing. You love to hear stories about the one that you lost and also that they're remembered.
Yeah.
That they're remembered, that they're not forgotten. And, so no, you did the right thing.
Yeah, and I didn't want to then talk to him about it because then I'm like, oh shit, if he's down, then I'm saying, hey Lou, I said, let me I do the best I can here, which is I think
you did absolutely.
I'm really glad you told me that. What are the 5 stages? It's grief, denial, anger, and I know they don't come up in any order. What are the other 2, if you know even?
Well, there's denial. I don't know.
No, it's fine.
You're going to have to cut this part.
No, I don't even know if it's relevant. I was just curious if you happen to know. It's not a big deal.
I'm having a brain fart.
No, I mean, it's not stuff. This is clinical stuff. That's not what you retain about this anyway. Yeah. Vaughn, thank you so much for sharing that. It was really kind of you. And again, man, I feel like I wish I can give you a hug because no, seriously, man, I'm like almost going to cry because I got 3 kids and this is like, I'm just sorry.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right. Sorry.
It's okay.
Tell me about 1 or 2 things you've done or 1 or 2 changes you've made that have had the biggest impact on your life.
Well, probably realizing that I don't have any control over hardly anything, or actually I have no control over anything but myself. Having run and operated a successful company that went through all the challenges that any company does, from and a big number of employees and stuff, being in control and thinking you're controlling what's going on and watching every penny, or the same thing with your family. And I think coming to the realization that I am in control of nothing but me. That is it. I don't have any control over what happens in my company, my employees, their motivations. I can create and set up a scenario where hopefully they can be successful and want to do the right thing, but that's not up to me. Realizing that all the things that I wanted, especially after I lost Jacob, I went through a period of time where my other 2 children probably felt smothered, trying to make sure, like literally calling and where are you at and are you okay? And which is probably natural. But I think finally coming to the realization that I am not in control and accepting that. I think going back to school a couple of years ago to become a certified music practitioner really helped me. I've understood since I got molested and knew the power of a Bernie Taupin Elton John song. I knew what that did for me, but you don't know the real reasons or the technical reasons or why music can impact us in ways that the spoken word or the written word or a painting or a photograph cannot. And without getting into stuff that sounds like Eastern mysticism and all that stuff, it is vibration.
Yeah.
And so going back to school and becoming a certified music practitioner and going through that and actually understanding the reasons why music can affect us in the way that it does, can change us and can be therapeutic to us, was life-changing for me because I always felt it, I believed it, but then to really understand it, and then to be able to use that now in a setting where I am actually helping people in a hospital setting or a nursing home or
through this
hospital setting.
Yeah, through that.
Well, the book for sure, but the music therapy. We're not music therapists, but certified music practitioner. You actually play acoustic music for patients at their bedside to help with any of 5 patient conditions. I mean, you are actually, so if somebody is actively dying and they're trying to prevent them from dying, you actually go in the room while the medical team is working on them. And there are specific things that you can do to help them survive. To just give you the quick example of that, the normal resting human heart rate is 60 beats per minute. So the team is working on them. You're trying to stay out of the way, but I like to position myself as close to their head as I could possibly get, and I like to be able to see the monitors. And so you have to know in your brain what 60 beats per minute feels like.
Right.
I will try to quickly, if I can, glance at a chart and see their age roughly, and I'll play something that would be familiar, maybe from when they were a senior in high school or in high school, but I'll play it at 60 beats per minute. I won't sing. in that situation, I might hum the melody, but I want to be right locked on 60 beats per minute
to try to get their heart in line with that.
Yeah, it's called entrainment. They will actually entrain to you, and you can watch their respirations and their heart rate start to normalize. If it doesn't work, you have to have a big enough repertoire of music at your disposal, because you're not carrying sheet music in there. You're playing. So I'll try that, and if that doesn't work, I'll switch up to something else right at 60 beats per minute.
Wow.
Stay right on that.
That's really cool.
And eventually you'll find something, even though this patient's unconscious and they're dying, eventually you will find something that will help. It will help. And, hospitals are now recognizing the important work that CMPs do, and they're hiring them.
That's wonderful, man.
To come in. So, you work with that. You work with people that are actively dying, and they're not trying to prevent them from dying. So you're playing improvised music at the patient bedside, progressively slower, progressively quieter. It helps calm the family and the staff that are around, but it helps them let go. It helps them relax and let go. If you're playing for a patient who is in acute pain, pain is a pulse. I mean, if you've had a toothache or an earache, you know that throb.
Yeah.
What you can't do in that situation, you cannot play at a specific beat per minute. To me, that's the hardest, because you're playing non-metered music. So if you played on a predictable beat, it would actually accentuate the pain. But when you play improvised, non-metered music, the human brain knows whatever that guy's playing is messed up. It's not right. And it's trying to correct what you're playing.
Yeah.
And it forgets about the pulse of the pain. And so they find that they can give them less pain medication if you come in and give them 30 minutes or so of non-metered improvised music once or twice a day.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah. And when you learn the theory of that, and you understand how it actually works, and then you go out, we have to do hundreds of hours of practicum to get that license, and you go out and do it in real world settings, and half of that we have to do in hospitals, and half of it can be in hospices or nursing homes, and you see the impact. Somebody that's dementia, I specialized in cognitive impairment, so stroke, dementia, things of that nature. In that situation, you play familiar music and try to do something that, again, would have been from when they were in school. Or as they progress, you might do something more simplistic, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or Happy Birthday, something that anybody would know. But it's interesting. You can see somebody that absolutely is not registering anymore. They no longer can speak. They've lost that ability. And they'll lock onto a song, and they'll get calm, and they'll be happy, and they'll rock to that music. What the sad part about that is, the second you're done playing, they're back to being lost. But for a period of time, because music is the last thing they lose, for a period of time, you've brought an immense amount of relief to them. So to finally get understanding of why music affects people the way that it does, and the reasons why that it does, and that it's not just some mumbo jumbo. There's a real actual reason why it works. It's altered how I write songs. I think my Saturday morning original songs actually were some of the best songs I've written, because I was going through school at that time and my practicum, and now having a more thorough understanding of why music affects people the way that it does. It kind of changed the way that I approach the music portion of my writing. And so, I think I'm writing better than ever, actually,
Where did you get, what school did you go to for this?
It's MHTP is the name of it. I think there's two schools in the United States, but MHTP is the one that I went to. There's 5 classes, 3 of which are long weekend classes, Zoom. So like Friday night from like 3 to 9, and then Saturday is all day, like 8 in the morning till 6 at night, Sunday 8 in the morning to 6 at night. You do 3 of those. Then there's all kinds of homework and papers that you have to turn in. There's a whole bunch of books that you buy. And then 2 of the classes are in person. I went to Good Samaritan Hospital in, I think it's Oak Grove, Illinois, right by Chicago. And those are 3-day. One of them's 4-day. You're there, and it's hardcore, and then you have to do a couple hundred hours of practicum and all the paperwork that goes with that before you can get certified. But it is very rewarding. But to go back to school at whatever I was, 53 years old, it's like my poor brain. I hadn't written a paper in years, but man, that's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. Really enjoyed it.
You said that realizing you have no control, that was a huge impact on my life as well in a very positive way. What prompted you to come to that conclusion, and what were some of the benefits that you've been given as a result of that?
Well, trying to be in control of our work environment or my kids, and it actually having an adverse effect oftentimes. It just wasn't working. And I would credit three people, really, Dr. Farrell Higgins that I've gone to, and then two of my mentors, a guy named Bill Ligon and a guy named Jim Gore. And those guys are both in their mid to late 80s, but, they've got a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
And talking to them and picking their brains about challenges that I was facing, and both of them saying, man, Bill's from Arkansas, really saying, man, when you going to just let it go? You're not in control of this stuff. And you get that light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to let this stuff go, and I'm going to trust, and I'm going to see what happens.
It ain't working like this. So you get to a certain point in time where it's like, screw it. I'll let it. It's easy to let it go because it's just not working.
Let it go
anymore.
and let's see what happens. And the results spoke for themselves.
Good for you, man.
But it was like a big boulder off your back.
Totally.
It was just like, but there's not an entrepreneur in the world that isn't a bit of a control freak.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. I mean, not everybody's
I don't even
wired
think
to be an entrepreneur.
Just anybody who's driven in general, you're pretty willful.
Yeah.
You really...
to be able to record, it seems like a lot of records.
It is a lot of records. 34 albums? And you don't...
the truth is,
this isn't like an EP with 6 songs on it. Your records are like chock full of, you got 15 songs. I mean, you got double records. I mean,
Yeah. The reality is, if I hadn't owned my company and had all those responsibilities and the responsibilities of kids and all that, I mean, honestly, it wouldn't be unrealistic to have 70 or 80 records. I mean, I've got enough songs. I was very diligent about my recording. But, the other way to look at that is everybody has their thing, I mean, some people are bass fishermen and some people are bowlers, This was my bass fishing or bowling,
Sure.
And I was very diligent about it. I also was very, we would do a song a night, hardly ever did we run another session. So I went in pretty prepared. Basically, I've recorded with only 3 people in all these years. Rick McClintock for about 20 years or 15, 20 years, whatever it was. Then Jim Barnes for like 11 years. And then these last 2 records were made with a guy named Randy Wills, but Jim Barnes was still involved with that. And they know my deal.
Right.
I mean, I show up, and in 3 hours, whatever we get done is what's going to be done.
Right.
And we're going to move on to the next one. But gosh, I wished I had double that many records to be. And it wasn't I just want to have the most records in the whole world. It's just what I do.
Yeah, it's what you do, man. I get it.
What I do. Richie Kotzen, I'm sure you've heard of Richie Kotzen.
Yeah, he's a great guitarist.
Oh my gosh. But when he turned 50, he put an album out called 50 for 50. And it was 50 brand new songs he released it on his 50th birthday. And in the press, people are like, that's just insane. And I think that's the coolest thing I ever heard in my life.
Why not?
That was
absolutely,
that's awesome. Yeah. He's very prolific too. So
great player. Happiest moment or happiest time in your life?
Well, the birth of my kids. The happiest 2 days of my life was when my daughter was born and when my sons were born, for sure. Nothing compares to that.
Most important thing your dad taught you?
To go to work. And the gift of a guitar, but it's important. I think my dad, we had moved from Kentucky back to Kansas, and we lived out on a gravel road 2 or 3 miles out of town. And I wanted to fix up my bike. I wanted to put knobby tires on my bike. And Dad came home, And I said, I want to get tires and a different seat for my bike. And he says, absolutely. Know how you can do it. Not a problem. So we ate supper. Now I was 11. We ate supper, and he said, let's get in the truck. We drove up the road to a guy that he worked with named Fred Sickler. And Fred was baling these little round bales of hay and putting them on a trailer. And Dad drove out to the field, and he said, Fred, he said, you'd mentioned you were needing some help. And Fred said, yeah. And he said, well, Vaughn here needs to make some money. Can you put him to work? Now, I wasn't a very big guy at 11 years old, but they were little bales. Fred said, yep. So Dad stayed long enough to show me how to use the hay hook. You know, my dad grew up on a farm. He knew how to do that. And he left. He told Fred, he said, call me when you're done and I'll come pick him up. So at 11 years old, I'm throwing bales of hay on a flat trailer and putting them in a chicken coop. I wound up working in the summers for Fred Sickler even after I got married.
That's
I'd
cool.
go back and haul hay for him. So my dad, you know, it's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want something, but you're going to have to go earn it. The other thing, too, to tie in with that, when I made enough money at my 10 cents a bale or whatever I got to buy my tires and stuff, I told Dad and Mom, I said, I got enough money to buy my tires. And they said, no, you don't. I said, what do you mean I don't? Saturday morning, they took me to Citizens National Bank, and we opened a little passbook account.
Yeah, I remember
and
those.
Dad and Mom said, a third of everything you make, you have to put in your bank account.
great.
I felt like,
so they
what?
they
I just worked.
you thought they were
I just worked to
embezzling.
get retired.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
What a great game to get instilled.
What a great lesson.
Yeah.
Great lesson. So, you know, I think those would be the things, you know, without question, you know, that, and my mom, she had a favorite saying, you know, my sister or I would say, that's not fair. And my mother would always say, there's a lot of things in this life that aren't fair. And that's just one of them.
Yeah, man. Ain't that the truth? I know, but I that's like a very honest answer. You know, I can't stand when you know, I don't want to get into this shit, but people are like, oh, it's not fair that my baby has this or that. And I'm like, what's fair? You better equip him or her to deal with this shit than you know, because you're raising an emotional quadriplegic otherwise, man. This is not going to work out well.
So I feel like my parents did me a big favor with that. You know, I do.
Totally. Most important lesson life has taught you.
Get over yourself. You know, if there's a break in the action, pick up a broom.
Yeah.
You know, go. There's always something that you can do. You're never in a situation where there isn't something you can do. So, but you know, we all go through this with such a sense, especially now, such a sense of entitlement. And I know my rights, and I have. Well, you know, pick up a broom, humble yourself.
Yeah.
Get over yourself. None of us are. I mean, if you think about it, if you've seen that picture that's got the sun and then it's got the other planets and then there's Earth and on Earth, if you think about it, if you took the head of a pin, we're not even a speck of dust on the head of a pin.
Correct.
You know, if you think about it,
Yeah.
we think we're so important and we're, you know, everything we do is of such magnitude. Get over yourself.
Yeah.
You know, we like Carrie Livgren, who I happen to know, who lives in Barryton, Kansas, by Topeka, but dust in the wind, you know, that's just all we are.
Yeah.
I mean, and so, get over yourself. Pick up a broom.
What's the most fun thing you've ever done?
Gosh, I don't know.
So it's
probably
tough question.
Playing with my kids. You know, I was one of those dads that liked to get down on the floor, and I'd let my daughter dress me in whatever and smear makeup on my face and have a tea party.
Nail polish on your toes? Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah,
and, you know, play with my kids, wrestle with my kids. And, man, if I could have a do-over in my life, you know, I would for sure do that. I would go back to from the time they were born till they got out of high school. I would just do that over again, you know. I failed miserably many times at being a dad.
Yeah.
I've certainly apologized a lot to my kids, but that's the most fun I've ever had. I mean, right now, you know, my granddaughter, I mean,
yes,
I get the joy of doing that. You know, I just went down and saw they live in Nashville, but dancing. I'll tell you what, the most fun I've ever had, really, I had the opportunity. My granddaughter's 2 years old, and she just feels music. And that we went to this place, and there was this guy playing acoustic guitar there in Nashville and singing, and she took my hand and she was dancing, and I was dancing with her.
That's cute.
Nobody else in the place was dancing. And for probably 30 minutes, we stood there, just my little granddaughter and I, and danced. And she would just lay her head back and close her eyes. And I thought, I mean, does it really get any better than that?
That's cute, man.
Oh, that's as good as it gets.
That's cute. Just a couple of questions, Vaughn, and I'm so happy that we got to hang out like this, and thank you so much for everything.
This has been fun. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and maybe where do you see yourself going in the next 10 years?
I'm a lot calmer. I'm not nearly as intense. You know, my dad is a pretty intense guy, and he's calmed down. My mom is pretty introverted. I'm kind of equal parts to them. I could be very intense. I don't think I'm nearly as intense as I used to be. Maybe I'm a bit more intentional than what I used to be. So you try to choose your battles and choose your words and try to say them a bit more calmly.
Yeah, totally. For your sake.
So I absolutely.
Less stress.
I certainly think I'm a lot calmer, and hopefully, I think I've always been kind. I do think that, but I'm a lot calmer and more intentional about the things that I do. 10 years from now, I hope I'm even more so. You know, the most valuable possession we have is our health.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at a guy like Steve Jobs when he got pancreatic cancer, I mean, he spent millions of dollars trying to stay alive. The most valuable possession we have is our health. Second to time.
Time, yeah.
You know, we all have a finite amount of time, and we waste so much of it, you know, on things that are absolutely meaningless. I'm hoping that the next 10 years are filled with things that are meaningful. And hopefully I have the gift of decent health. And I'm really excited about the revised edition of the book came out. There were a couple of little changes that just came out. So there are a couple of little changes that needed to be made and some tweaks. And I'm going to do 4 more.
Great. I'm really happy to hear that.
That are all letters for healing, but different subtitles. So I'm very excited about the future. I'm excited about
That's great.
Just being able to go out and help people, either with the book or with my music, or during my CMP work for folks. I think I'm going into, I'm 57 years old, but I think I'm going into maybe the most productive and meaningful time of my life. I hope.
Good.
I mean, that's the goal.
I hope so too. I'm really happy for you. Any final words of wisdom? And I can't thank you enough, man. You just really thank you.
One thing that's really troubling to me are all of the videos that are on social media of people doing good deeds. And they're doing this good deed with friends stationed at 4 different camera angles in high definition while they're doing their good deed for someone, a random good deed. Now, random good deed doesn't involve your buddies with 4 high definition cameras on each corner watching you do the good deed. Not tooting my own horn, but I give to people when sometimes I don't have it to give. And I believe that if you interviewed 500 people that know me, I think all 500 people would tell you that.
Yeah.
And I do it as anonymously as humanly possible. I don't want somebody to feel beholden to me. I don't want somebody to feel awkward because I've done something. I don't go around broadcasting that to people. I don't have somebody shooting a video in high definition so I can get likes and good for you, Vaughn, for giving that guy a pair of shoes or whatever. Listen, we should be giving as much as we can to our fellow man, to our fellow humans. Yep. You have no idea what someone else, what their pain is. So to give you an example, that guy that cut you off on the road, you have no idea what just happened in his life. It could be that the guy is just distracted and on his phone. It could be that he just got a call that his son fell off a cell phone tower. He could have just lost his job of 30 years, or got served divorce papers, or his dog just died. You don't know.
No.
You don't know. I think showing some mercy and showing some grace and cutting some people some slack instead of flipping them off and screaming out the window. You know, you don't know what another person's pain is. You know, for 32 years, I walked around having been molested and been damaged and broken. And people wondering probably, why is he acting the way he is? Or why did he say what he did? Or what the heck is his deal? Because I was carrying something around that I wasn't equipped to deal with. It's not their fault that I was carrying that around, but it doesn't change the fact that I was. And what has changed to me, maybe I'd give you a different answer to that, is I think I have come to realize that I am nobody to judge anyone.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that person standing across the table or screaming at the person at Starbucks because they got the wrong oat milk in their latte. They're not screaming because they got the wrong oat milk in their latte.
Yeah, there's something else going on. Yeah.
There's something else going on.
Yeah.
And Vaughn 5 years ago wouldn't have been as respectful of that. He wouldn't have been as understanding of that.
Yeah.
Vaughn today says, hey, I don't know what your pain is. I don't know what's happened in your life or what just happened a few minutes ago. But as hard as it is to watch you do what you're doing, I'm going to try to extend some grace and some mercy and say a little prayer for you.
Yeah.
You know,
good for you, man.
That's, if I could leave people with anything, is be kind and do your good deeds.
Nice,
and don't worry about who's filming it and making sure that you get likes and post it on your social media. Do it because it's the right thing to do. And instead of that road rage and flipping people off and screaming, let's start showing some mercy and some grace to those people that are around us. I think if we could just do that, a lot of the problems that we're experiencing literally would just go away.
I agree with you.
We're just all trying to do the best we can. I mean, I really do think most everybody is trying to do the best they can.
Yeah, I agree. Everybody's just trying to get through the day, man. That's it, you know, pretty much.
Trying to get through the day and survive and do the best they can. And who are we? I'm nobody to judge, that's for sure. It's
funny when you mention that, this buddy that I was talking about, my friend Louie, God, probably when I've known him a long, long time, but we were about 22 years old or something. I remember his father said something to me. We were standing on the Grand Concourse in the Bronx, and he was just leaving his apartment. And his dad said something to me, and I didn't understand I said, I need to retain this. And it reminded me when you said it, he said, a rich man doesn't need to tell you how rich he is. A smart man doesn't need to tell you how smart he is, and a good man doesn't need to tell you how good he is. And I was 22. I didn't know. I said, I need to hang on to this because there's going to be a value in this. I didn't know it then, and I don't even know how I was smart enough to know that it was going to have a value, but something about it. And I talked to him. He's 82 now, man. I talked to him about that a few weeks ago. It was funny. And I forgot the smart part. And he goes, no, man, you forgot the smart part. I was like, oh, yeah, thank you. But it's so funny you said that because I saw a guy last week online, and this is what he said. He goes, and there's a guy who wants to be a guru, and he says, hey, describe me in one word on Facebook. Like, what are people going to say? Like, you're not going to say you're an egomaniac, you're insecure, you're an asshole. They're going to say, oh, you're wonderful. And I was like, oh my God, I would love to call him and say, dude, go get some help, man. You're super insecure.
Absolutely.
You know, I feel sad for you. But anyway, I agree with you on that. Sorry for going on. Let me tell people where they could find you. I would love for people to check out all of these things. First of all, the revised edition of Letters for Healing just came out. If you or anybody you know has lost a family member, I would really I read this cover to cover and I was like crying. I had a hard time getting through the last 20 pages of it, and I just text Vaughn. I'm like, Vaughn, it's very moving and very helpful stuff in here. So again, if you know anybody who's lost, or if you've lost somebody, man, read this. It's going to help in your healing. It's available everywhere that you can buy books, Amazon, anywhere that you can buy a book, it's available. I would also, Facebook, The Last Songwriter or For the Survivors. You can find Vaughn on there. Let's see. On the same thing with all his music's available everywhere. I would check out, it's Vaughn Kopfman, Vaughn VON Kopfman KOPFMAN. You got a lot to choose from, a lot to listen to there. And there's, if you're looking for hard rock stuff, check out his Big Daddy Loud. Daddy has 2 D's, not one. Check out his Big Daddy Loud albums. They're very cool. Great rock band. If you want something that's a little more singer-songwriter, great lyrics, very melodic, check out any of his solo albums. Is there anything else that where people could find you?
My website is thelastsongwriter.com. There will be a page on there, so if you buy the revised edition of the book, the songs are there so that you can go listen to them. If they get the electronic version of the book, of course, they're embedded so you can get them. But if Elton John's listening, I've got songs for you if you're interested.
There you go. Elton?
I'm sure he will. I'm sure. I think the phone's ringing now, actually. But hey, I want you to know this has meant so much to me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Man, I've watched a bunch of your programs. I mean, you've interviewed some really neat guys and have told some really great stories. And I mean, Steve Lukather had to be just like off the chain. If you've read his biography, it's just it's so well written and
it is
amazing. So anyway, I want to thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and the feeling's mutual. So thank you for taking the time and spending with me. And anything else that you could tell people about you or where to go? New albums, again, will be coming out soon, and they are called...
Yeah, I would guess the 2 albums, Occupied and Invaded and Ambiguous Man, will probably be out by Christmas time, I would guess.
Awesome.
That's the plan anyway. Ambiguous Man will for sure come out first. I've wanted to do a rock instrumental record forever.
I'm looking forward to that because I'm surprised you haven't done that yet, actually. You're a great player.
I'm pretty stoked about that one.
That's cool.
That's a lot of fun. So do that first.
Awesome.
The book, though, is really going to be the big concentration, with it just coming out. And I got a lot of promotion stuff to do for that.
Good.
So, and I'll go around and do talks and things with that. We kind of combine songs and reading the letters and talking about it. So it winds up being a really good experience for people. Everybody's lost somebody, so we're all kind of on that together, so it's very rewarding to be able to help people that way.
Thank you, man. You're a very kind human being, and I'm glad we got to connect. Hang on one second. Let me just wrap this up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, share it with your friends and let everybody know. Thanks very much to Vaughn Kopfman. Again, please check out his either solo albums under Vaughn, VON, Kopfman, KOPFMAN, or Big Daddy Loud. He's got 6 albums with that band. Again, thelastsongwriter.com or forthesurvivors.org. And again, if you know anybody, Letters for Healing, who has lost someone, this is a great book. Most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, have fun, and we'll see you soon. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Vaughn, thanks for everything, brother.
Thank you so much.